Greetings, mathematicians. Today we're looking at example 2 of section 6.1 and finding the domain of a rational expression. So the two steps that are here: set the denominator equal to 0 and solving for a particular equation. However, it's not going to be a solution. It's going to be all the values that need to be excluded from the domain. So in A, our denominator is 4t minus 1. So 4t minus 1 equals 0. Add 1 to both sides, we get 4t equals 1. Divide both sides by 4, and t is equal to 1/4. This is actually the value that t cannot be, because if it was, 4 times 1/4 would give us 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0, which is why it needs to be excluded from the domain. So for A, we'll just put A here, the domain in set builder notation would be the set of all t values such that t is a real number, and t cannot equal 1/4. So t cannot equal 1/4. So for B, we have a quadratic trinomial that can be factored. We do have to use AC method, and since the A value is not 1, it's going to be AC method followed by factoring by grouping. So for B, we have to set this equation equal to 0. So 2x squared minus 11x plus 5, setting the denominator equal to 0. So we're going to have to do the AC method. A is 2, B is negative 11, C is 5. So the product of AC is 10, and the two numbers that multiply to give me positive 10, but when I add them give me negative 11, are negative 10 and negative 1. Negative 10 times negative 1 is positive 10. Negative 10 plus negative 1 is negative 11. So I'm going to use these two numbers to help me split this middle term. So 2x squared minus 11x, minus 10x minus 1x. I'm going to go and write that one there. And plus 5, set that equal to 0. And we'll do our factoring by grouping. So factor these two terms, this group and then that group. 2x is the GCF of the first group, followed by x minus 5. And negative 1 is going to be our GCF of the second group, so minus 1 times x minus 5. Set that equal to 0. Negative 1 times x, negative 1x, negative 1 times negative 5, positive 5. And so now we have our factors, x minus 5, which is factored out, times 2x minus 1, set that equal to 0. So now that we have our factors set equal to 0, again, not solutions, but we set our factors equal to 0, so x would be 5, and for this factor, 5 minus 5 would give us 0, and here x would equal positive 1/2. So again, they're not the solutions, they're the values that need to be excluded from the domain. So for this one, let's go ahead and write it right over here. X, the set of all x values such that x is a real number, and I will just write underneath it, x cannot equal 5, and make it look better, 5, and x cannot equal 1/2. And that would be the set or the answer in set builder notation. Now for C, what's interesting is that it's x squared plus 4. Any number that you square is going to be positive, other than 0. Even if it was 0, 0 squared is 0, 0 plus 4 is 4. Any negative number you substitute for x, when you square it, becomes positive. Add 4, the denominator is still positive. Any positive number is going to be squared positive, and add 4, still positive. So any value actually works in the denominator for C. So that answer is just going to be the set of all x's such that x is a real number. close the set, and that's it. And that's how you answer example 2A, B, and C.